Welcome, I'm Bill Wake. This is my weekly summary of the work we did on Twitch. Lately, we're working on a financial planning tool I'm calling Fiume, and its goal is to let you plan medium to long term for retirement or whatever. All right, this past week we focused on basically interest or inflation, return on investment, all those growth curve kind of things, good or bad. If it's a liability, it really is kind of stinks, but in any case, we'd like to be able to say you've got some asset and over time it's growing, say it's a stock portfolio growing by return on investment. And, so we'll get that kind of growth curve going. And to do this, we need to calculate it per scenario. So I'm not going to bother showing that in the demo, but basically we've got this notion of scenarios, and you could have two different asset possibilities in the two different scenarios growing at some rate and see what happens. Okay, so to do that with scenario, it had the original calculations for net worth, so the main graph we do. And trying to extract a method for that made me realize this is probably a candidate for a method object. When it's tricky to extract a method because there's too much state going on or something, extracting out to a method object is a pretty good way to handle that. Okay, so we got that extracted. We have to pass the scenario and the start dates to our value calculations now, because the scenario determines kind of what's the context of things. And the start date is, you need that to calculate interest if, your interest starts on a particular date. So we can't just say, here's the amount of money. We have to say, based on the current date relative to the start date. Okay, and so we have to calculate the monthly interest rate, which is not impossible, but it's annoying. You take the annual percentage rate, add 1 to represent 100%, that's the principal plus the growth, basically, and take the square root of 12. Because you're trying to convert it to the monthly amount. We're going to have compound interest, so exponents get involved. All right, and then what we do is we update the rate from a slider. So our assumptions is a set of sliders, and you can create them and name them and everything. But once you have them, you can change the interest rate and see what happens to your graph, basically. And we've done further refactoring of net worth. I'm moving towards a new kind of report that's more like more of a current view of income versus expenses. And the work we're doing refactoring it moves it closer to that, and I expect to see that next week. All right, let's see a demo. Okay, so here's the impact. We've got one item in our portfolio is a stock portfolio starting at $1,000, and it starts in 2035, and you can see the graph starts there. And the growth of this thing is based on ROI. Okay, well, ROI is one of our assumptions. So let's take a look there. And we can see right now it's set for a 10% growth. It could range from 1 to 20. And if you grow it at 10%, basically this is 20 years. So 20 years, you'll have about $6,000, $6,500, something like that. And you can change this. We tried to get real time, as I dragged, and just couldn't quite make that work. But let's change it. So notice $6,000. We drop it down to 6%, and it's just over $3,000. So the curve flattened out a bit, and it's definitely not as tall. When you're editing this, you have a drop down that lets you choose any of the assumptions you've made. So I could go by inflation rate. I have no idea what the picture is there. Okay, well, if we have 33% inflation, that, which is effectively treated as the interest rate, but, you get a fortune, but most investments aren't returning 33% these days, not for very long anyway. And if we get down to, let's get to 6, we're back down to that 3,000-ish. All right, and let's look at code. So here's scenario, and this is where the original net worth calculation was. So when you make a method object, you're basically creating a new class that is, well, at least to start with, it contains just the method you're extracting. And we pass it the scenario, which is this, because computation of value has to use the scenario to have that context. We also pass the layers, that's liability, expense, income, and asset, and just the values. That's maintained as a list, or a dictionary, mapping from its name to its value, or its layer. And we're going to pass those in. We could fetch them in the other routine, but it just seemed like a kind of independent. Like, I don't want to pass the representation through and make the client know it's maintained as a dictionary kind of thing. So, and then we pass the range, which is what months are you trying to graph. So in our case, it was 2024 to 2054. Okay, and what this produces is a scenario summary. So let's take a look at that. All right, it's basically, you have a set of scenarios, and each one knows its name, and then each one's going to have its net worth by month, which is really just the month, year, and the amount of money at that. So that's really, the monthly summary is really corresponds to 1 point on the graph. And, the next point is in that array, and we work through the array to make the graph. And if there are multiple summary or multiple scenarios, there's a whole list of them. Each one's got its own graph, with its own amount of money and so on. All right, so here's net worth. To do this, you basically extract, well, you create a new class with the variables that you're working with, so scenario, layers, and range, and then you create one method compute that produces a scenario summary and does all the work, basically. Now, this is kind of a long method still, but one thing we've done is we introduced we kind of changed it around quite a bit, actually, but we've introduced this notion of money by type that's going to, for each layer type, liability or expense, or all those, it's going to track the total separately. And so we'll run through the list of layers, we'll accumulate the amount for each one at that date in this scenario. And when you've finished this loop, you've got all your separate ones, liability, expense, income, and asset, are all separately there. All right. And so the first calculation is net income to date. You need this to know your net worth. Basically, it's, if you're earning a salary and you have your expenses and, you have some amount of income left over, we're summing that across the whole time. That's your net savings, basically. And so the monthly totals, net income, which is income minus expenses, basically, accumulates to that. And then your net worth is how much have you saved so far, plus how much do you have for assets, so your savings in 401k or whatever. And we record that in the monthly summary for each month year that we're working through. And then finally, we take all those net worth by month in the array there, and that's the net worth by month. That list comes back for the scenario summary. So everything you need is there. All right, so let's see money by type. Let's see. So it really is a map from type to money, and we initialize it by setting everything to 0. And then the accumulator part, we just add that money, to the accumulator for that type. And then when you ask for net income, it's income plus expense, which is already negated, or assets is assets minus liabilities. Again, the money coming in is negative for those. I don't know if that's the best decision. It's kind of how the code was working before, but if we're waiting till this moment to say net income is income minus expense, that feels like a better equation to me. So we might change that the signed calculations go away. So here we do signed amount, which makes it negative or positive or negative. I think maybe that's not needed at the point here. So we'll have to assess where else uses that concept. But yeah, I think that's probably an artifact of how we got here. All right, and then let's see. Leia has that calculation, the signed amount calculation. So basically, it's checking the dates. So our curve over there just now started 10 years in, and we don't want to calculate the as if it were starting on the first 10 years ago, 10 years prior, because it'd be worth a fortune before you even got going. So we had to figure out what the right start date is, and then we use the monthly growth rate in the assumptions. So that's how that gets tied in, and based on the what month we're asking for. Okay, so assumptions. This is that 12th power. So it's 1 plus the current value. That's divided by 100 because it's listed as a percent. And then you take one of the 12th power. The 12th root is, the nth root is x to the 1 over whatever. So x to the 1/12 is that amount. Its calculation, well, it's up here. It calculates, when you ask for the value, it does the calculation to use that percent. So it figures out how many months we're talking about. It takes the monthly rate, or the 1 plus whatever to the 12th root. For the power, takes it to the number of months. So it's doing that exponentiation, and then multiplies that by the amount, and that's the value of your computation. So we got through basically the whole end-to-end interest calculation. It's amazing to me, this formula and the corresponding one in assumptions. That's sort of the heart of the calculation, and then there's a lot of other work to embed it to the right place and all that. But I'm pretty happy with it. It was very nice to see an exponential curve come up when that's what you're expecting. And we checked against, some online calculators to make sure we had the right values going on there. But that was fun. Next week, I expect to work on that income versus expense report. Basically, it's kind of a little bar chart each month. How much are your income? How much is your expenses? And then I'd like to put a line that shows, are you above or below zero with that? And if we finish that, we've got some refactoring to do that requires persistence changes, and we may do that first. But I'd like to also get onto year-based assumptions. So it'd be nice to have something that said, this is the year I'm going to stop working is 2037, and then you could make like Social Security could. Well, no, Social Security wouldn't, but your salary would stop. And then maybe a separate one for Social Security starts. Maybe that's at 70, and you could drag that back and forth, how old or what year. And I think that'll be the big, that'll be a big change in how that works. We used to say there was going to be a death date, but we never did anything with it. So again, I think this could fit into that. If you die in 2052 or 22 to 70 or whatever, we could make things that depend on that. And I like the way the assumptions, that you've got this little slider, you can just kind of control those and do these robustness analysis kind of things. What if inflation goes up to 20%? What if this, so I think it's a good mechanism. All right. You can join us Monday through Thursday, 2 to 4:30 Eastern Time, or 6 to 8:30 p.m. UTC. And xp123.com/Twitch will take you over to Twitch when the live session's going, or you can go to xp123.com/YouTube. You can find the old sessions. They're a week or two behind, and they're lightly edited. Thanks for joining today, and I hope I catch you in the future. Bye-bye.